Hey, I'm Jess, and you know what's already tough in video games? Boss fights. Whether they're an endgame boss, mini-boss, doesn't matter. Bosses are supposed to be tough. You're probably already gonna feel tense and frustrated, but how about we throw totally creeped out into the mix? That's what these developers did when they created the following downright horrifying looking bosses. Spoilers and skin-crawling yuckiness lie ahead, so beware, but here are 10 of the creepiest video game boss designs. Number 10, Gygas from Earthbound. Let it never be said that boss designs couldn't be scary in the SNES era. In 1989, the Earthbound series introduced the game's main antagonist, Gygas, who intended to wipe out humanity. Series creator Shigesato Itoi said the boss was inspired by a traumatizing experience in his childhood, and the game's music composer called Gygas the embodiment of evil. The weirdest part is that Earthbound is a pretty bubbly kids game experience, right up until the appearance of Gygas. It may seem less than threatening due to the pixel art style, but it appears as a set of contorted howling faces that drift across the screen. It babbles incoherent phrases to a horrifying soundtrack, and the only way to kill it is by praying for your survival. Yeesh. Number 9, Falling Woman from Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly. Okay, so Falling Woman isn't technically a boss per se, but she does still haunt my personal nightmares, so I think that earns her a spot on this list. Fatal Frame 2 already has the perfect conceit for scaring the shit out of you. You have to pull out your camera and take a picture of its ghostly enemies to do any damage to them, and you'll do the most damage if they're about to launch their spooky selves right at you. The Falling Woman is particularly gruesome as she literally falls screaming from the ceiling, and you have to head down to snap a picture to exorcise her. All the while she's crawling backwards towards you on her broken limbs. If you manage to get too far away, she'll just zap back up to the ceiling and fall on you again, causing jump scare after jump scare. Number 8, Gaping Dragon from Dark Souls. Yeah, look, this is the first but certainly not the last Soulsborne boss I've got on this list. Honestly, I could make this entire list and then some just out of Soulsborne bosses, but we're trying to give some other games a look in. Personally, gaping is just not an adjective I need before the word dragon, but when you see this guy, it checks out. Allegedly, he used to be a regular dragon, but then got real hungry for a real long time, and now he's, well, this. He's essentially all legs, claws, bones, wings, and teeth, and way too many hit points. For that extra ick factor, you can also cut off his tail. Lovely. Number 7, Rat King from The Last of Us 2. Now you're going to see some patterns developing on this list. Really long limbs, way too many limbs, solitary gross creatures that are actually multiple gross creatures all stapled together into one superorganism. This one's the latter. This nasty giant superorganism is basically a heap of stalkers, clickers, and a bloater that have all glommed together. Abby encounters it in the dark in the Seattle hospital. At first you'll try to run, but eventually have no other choice but to fight. When Abby damages it enough, one of these intertwined buddies will gorily peel themselves off the main mass of flesh and exhibit behaviors not typical of their enemy type. The best part of this is they actually did the mocap by piling the actors on top of each other, and it looks exactly as funny as you hope it will. During the fight, Abby will exclaim, "I'm not dying here," but more realistically, you probably will die here, more than once. Number 6, Granfaloon from Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Castlevania has no shortage of bosses that could sit happily in this list, but for this one, let's go with our theme of gross superorganisms. At first glance, Granfaloon, or Legion, might look like a giant brain. Well, it's not. It's a fleshy mass built out of human sacrifices. As we've learned by now, superorganisms rarely stay as they originally appear, and this guy is no exception. As Alucard damages it, bodies will break away and shamble towards you, or shower onto you from above, and the icky tentacle creature at its core is revealed, complete with laser beam arms. To add to the creep factor, this thing lets out blood-curdling shrieks throughout the fight. No thank you. Number 5, Amalgam Alpha from The Evil Within. Before I crack into this one, I have to give an honorable mention to Laura from Evil Within, a truly horrific foe that fits right into our really long limbs category, and also has limbs where there shouldn't be limbs. Unfortunately, I have to give this slot to the game's other antagonist, Amalgam Alpha. Because really, what on earth is this? Well, we know it's a superorganism made up of corpses and other bits and pieces. Yes, horror developers went with the theme. But it's also got a gaping, drooling mouth underneath it, and a big eye on a tentacle for spotting you around corners so it can kill you dead. So I guess this is like if the Rat King and Gaping Dragon had a baby, a really, really horrible baby. All I know is I do not need to see that love scene. Number 4, Marguerite Baker from Resident Evil 7. For those of you who are still with me in this video and just want to hear about an enemy that's only one thing made up of one thing, I give you Marguerite Baker. We do have a return of horrifically long limbs, but this chick brings the jump scares like nobody else, especially if you, like me, were unlucky enough to encounter her in virtual reality. Would not recommend. The more you shoot at her, the more Marguerite dissolves into a limby, bloody mess, with her lower half serving as some kind of insect nest. Ew. But she doesn't let those bullets keep her from trying to make your insides into outsides, so I respect the fighting spirit, I guess. Number 3, Omega Flowey from Undertale. Undertale is a game with a huge cult following for a bunch of very good reasons, the boss fight with Omega Flowey or Photoshop Flowey certainly being one of them. Flowey looks completely messed up, for one, with horrifying images on its TV head, thorny green arm protrusions, and a mouth? A face? Look, I don't know what the pink bit is supposed to be. It's particularly off-putting as it doesn't sit with the art style of the rest of the game. As you'd expect, staying alive in this fight is pretty bloody difficult already, but what really sets this boss apart is he can crash your game and overwrite your saves. That's beyond not cool. Number 2, Pyramid Head from Silent Hill. An oldie but a goodie, the one and only nightmare fuel with a human body and a giant triangle for a head could not be left off this list. The thing I love about the creep factor with Pyramid Head is the designers didn't try overly hard to make him creepy. No wild number of limbs or conglomeration of organisms, he just has the perfect aura of terror. Pyramid Head doesn't have to shriek or throw dead bodies at you, he's horrifying just as he is, with an oversized geometric head and his massive sword scraping along the ground. He's just humanoid enough to be disturbingly relatable and just monster enough to make you persistently uncomfortable. He also fits perfectly with the psychological themes of Silent Hill. Great combo, or horrible combo, I never know with these lists. Number 1, The One Reborn from Bloodborne. Having to leave the screaming orphan of Koth who wields its own placenta as a weapon, and Ludwig the Accursed with his nightmarish half-flayed body and multiple ghoulish wailing mouths to one side is a shame, but there can only be one and our number 1 spot has to go to The One Reborn. For the uninitiated, The One Reborn is an unholy giant of a boss, particularly as it's hard to pass exactly what you're looking at. He's a bony monstrosity with more legs, hands, and protrusions than you can count. Luckily, he's not too tough to take on, so hopefully you only have to look at him once. He growls and screams as his various body parts take damage, and its very existence brings up a lot of questions. Not the least of which is, if this is The One Reborn, who is the One? And how do we ensure we never ever meet him? Let me know down in that comment box which video game boss scared the pants off you. I've been Jess for WhatCulture, and do stay tuned for plenty more content. Come say hi to me on Twitter, and I'll see you again soon.